Despite being such an iconic franchise with a plethora of memorable designs, something I always appreciated about the Sonic series was how it never got stagnant from an artistic perspective. Well, okay, until it did.
Not the mama, not the mama.
You do that one more time and I'm gonna throw you across the room.
But when it comes to a comparable series such as Mario, you can think of the world around him, what enemies you'd see, what characters are floating about. But for a long time with Sonic the Hedgehog, I want to say for a good 20 or so years, each game did a wonderful job at remaining so visually distinct from one another. Sonic 1 looks so different from Sonic 3, Adventure looks different from Adventure 2, with each game taking inspiration from different genres, styles, and locations. Now this isn't all good. A byproduct of this is that it causes the world to have a lack of cohesion, in the way where it becomes confusing as to how all these extremely aesthetically different places could exist on Mobius/Earth/Sonic's World. I can't believe it's just called Sonic's World now, dude, what the fuck? This is an issue that started cropping up more and more, once folks made it clear when they didn't like certain approaches they took to this, with 06 I believe being the breaking point. And you could definitely tell that from that point on, especially around the time of Generations and Lost World, Sega were making it more of a priority to unify Sonic's world, adding in plot points, such as there being a human side and animal side, and anytime they do want to experiment more, it's on a separate lost planet or these mysterious hidden islands. There's somewhat of a justification for the vastly different appearances. But one of the more underappreciated aspects of this, I feel, is with enemy design. Because Sonic games, especially the early 3D ones, had such a focus on story, it meant that enemies needed to reflect that. Like in 1, 2, 3 CD, you could get away with nothing but badniks because Robotnik was the sole villain. But in Adventure 2, the government is after Sonic. Guess we need enemies to represent them as a threat. What about Black Knight and Secret Rings? Eggman isn't even in those. And because of this more ambitious approach in always shaking things up, it's meant Sonic has fought some strange things over the years. Pirates, genies, rock monsters. Like, some of these things do not belong anywhere near Sonic the Hedgehog. I think Sega started to think this too, since after they began this unification of the franchise, we've seen them revert to using the same robots again and again, regardless of whether or not it makes sense. For example, the Goombas in like every single Mario game in existence, give or take a few. When you think Mario enemy, what comes to mind is a Goomba. But when looking at what's arguably the most iconic Sonic enemy, you'd probably think of the Motobug. Yet after Sonic the Hedgehog 1, it wasn't seen again in any meaningful way until Sonic 4, 19 years later, and since then has appeared in every single mainline Sonic game, which really feels like taking a step back in a way. How Eggman thought to go from this to this, then back to this, I have no fucking clue. And that's because there is no reason for it other than that's what's worked in the past. Eggman isn't using Motobugs at this point because they're efficient, he's using them because it's the iconic Sonic badnik. I think that's what folks mean when they refer to the 2010s as the meta era. I've seen some people try to discredit this term by claiming the games themselves weren't meta or fourth wall breaking, when I always saw it as more so referring to what was influencing Sega's choices around that time. Old stages, old badniks, old characters, that's what's meta. Now that's not to say they're all winners. When each game had a unique set of bad guys, we were bound to stumble upon some questionable choices. Looking at you, Shuffle. And so today, I want to take a look at some of the weirdest and most bizarre enemies we've fought throughout the Sonic franchise. Now, not weird as in bad per se, weird as in...
What the f***? Why are you f***ing here, man? You're so old. Where's your wife? Go home to your family, dude.
Sonic 3 was the first game to introduce Act 1 mini-bosses. Up until that point, it was clear to everyone that only each second act would end in a boss. But in 3, every stage ends in one. A concept which I could give or take, to be honest. Sonic bosses aren't known for being amazing or anything, and there is a lot of thrill to be had in just running through a stage at the speed of sound and blasting past the goalpost. But I still appreciate the effort in developing a unique foe for every single stage. Although one that especially confused me as a kid was the boss for Sandopolis Act 1, simply known as the Guardian. What is this thing supposed to be? Given the fact that it's a rock monster, it evidently wasn't built by Eggman, and something which I assume is guarding the entrance to the pyramid, but like why? This pyramid has nothing inside of it other than killer ghosts. You think that'd be trap enough? What is he hiding in there? Furthermore, at the end of the stage we fight against Eggman, who's just been waiting for Sonic down there, I guess. But does that mean he also had to fight against the Guardian to get inside? He would have to, since that's what triggers the pyramid to rise. But even then, you can't hurt him. When you attack his head, only his body remains, where new arms and legs then rise and his head just grows back into place. Furthermore, what the fuck is up with his face? He looks like a fucking monkey more than a rock monster. Don't believe me? Bam! Speaking of pyramids, special shout out to the egg golem from Sonic Adventure 2. It's a great idea for a boss, where it's this big rock guardian made by some ancient civilization we never get to see. But Eggman finds and takes over it with some machine he attaches to its head, and so during the fight with Sonic he kicks it off with his amazing Terria move, and so it turns on Eggman, prompting the fight that takes place within the Dark Story. Also, I think Sonic Adventure 2 is the only mainline game to have both Sonic and Eggman present, yet they never fight. Also present are the Boos, who I'm shocked they never bothered giving a different name given the obvious comparison, but I always find the ghosts from Sandopolis way more threatening with their beady black eyes and fangs. But the Boos are cool too. Even the Boom Boo variant, which made a reappearance in Lost World, reminds me of Coraline. There was a moment in Sonic X where they possess Amy, and as a kid it freaked me the fuck out when I saw it in some AMV on YouTube. Like, how the fuck did they think this would be okay for kids? King Boom Boo from SZ2 definitely takes the cake, however. His random multicolored tongue, T-Rex arms, and the bizarre fucking noises he makes are amazing. Did you know? Initially, Knuckles' reaction to seeing him for the first time was supposed to sound way more freaked out like fucking Shaggy.
What the... a ghost? What? A ghost?
It was nice to see the King return in the recent Team Sonic Racing, but I find his slight redesign to be way worse. You can barely make out his tongue, and the eyes facing forward instead of being on top of his head makes him look way less intimidating in my opinion. Like, what's he thinking? The classic games being released on such primitive hardware, and being sprite-based obviously, meant they had to give each badnik a design simple enough to translate into such few pixels. And while producing some amazing ones, there were a few times where they became a little questionable. The 8-bit games are especially guilty of this, given they had even less room to work with. Who remembers the iconic Vegobot, who had a big rutabaga on his head? Or Mecha Hyoko, whom in Chaos was designed to look like a chicken bird thing, but then in Triple Trouble was redesigned to being just a long purple goop guy with a big nose. I mean, he looks friendly enough, I guess. Although I would much rather grab a bite with Frogger. Just look at that smile. Labyrinth, though, has one of the greatest foes Sonic has ever had to face, however. Welcome the dreaded I guess we'll just call him by his official character description given in the Sonic Encyclopedia, which refers to him as a glue-spitting trundle duck, which is an incredibly harsh insult. Shut the fuck up, you glue-spitting trundle duck. See, it works on so many levels. You know what, though? Eggman made the perfect badnik in Sonic 3 and never revisited it. That being the Toxo Mister in Lava Reef. Sure, he doesn't have the most interesting design out there, just being a pole with a lone eye on top. But they emitted this gas that would not only slow you down and heavily hinder your jumping abilities, but it would also slowly drain your ring count. He literally made a badnik that would kill you over time. I just never went back to it. Like, fuck, I'd fill a room with these guys and problem solved. Next boss for Sonic Frontiers 2, giant can of bug repellent. Sonic Rush Adventure is unique in that it shows Sonic in a pirate theme, facing off against the robots Captain Whisker and... John, it's just Johnny.
Who names their henchman Johnny? That's an asshole's name.
But did you know that we've had to face off against pirates before in the series? Welcome... I think their name is just Pirates. They're seen in Casinopolis and Sonic Adventure when you're playing as Knuckles. They're on the big pirate ship, obviously. You wouldn't guess they came from a Sonic game, though, just by glancing at them. They look more like they belong in Ape Escape. They're unique for being one of the rare enemies in Sonic that drops rings when you attack them. And apparently they're not even human, instead being puppets, which I guess means they were probably produced in the same line as the Sonic Tails and Knuckles dolls from the same game. The Tails one used to really scare me when I was younger because of my already huge fear of the Tails doll from Sonic R. And perfect, now Mania canonizes the existence of a smaller Amy doll. Spin-offs I assume were allowed to be much more lenient with what they could get away with. The star, of course, being the hit 2005 game Shadow the Hedgehog, which saw the guy face off against the Black Arms, this armada of space creatures who honestly look pretty cool. Did you know the Sonic Universe comics introduced a new one called Eclipse, who turns out to be Shadow's, like, half-brother? It's not as dumb as it sounds, I promise. Some of these guys look fucking lame as hell, though, like the first boss, Black Bull. Although I will say, there's something unsettling about the textures used on these fellas. It's probably the giant round wart-like patterns you can see on some of them. And there's this part during the last story where all the characters except for Shadow are frozen in place, and Black Doom sends his offspring over to literally eat them alive. E10 and up, by the way. Secret Rings has a surprising lack of variety given the creative concept, most of the enemies simply being recolors of the same genie guys over and over again. But the bosses are a highlight for sure, like the Scorpion, the giant steampunk guy, but I wanted on the record that Eraser Jin's final form sucks fucking dick. Not only has the giant purple genie already been done in Sonic Riders with the Babylon Guardian, But this design is just way too busy, it's a fucking mess. I mean, I guess that's fitting with a name like Alflela Walela, but why does he have fucking steam coming out of his knees, shoulders, and eye? Come on, Secret Rings, why can't you be more like Black Knight with their amazing designs? Such as Fish 1, red, and Fish 1, blue. Sonic Chronicles, despite being shit,
Daring today, aren't we?
does a lot of really smart choices when it comes to who you face off against. First of all, shoutouts to it being the only Sonic game to reference the SWAT bots from Sad AM, where they got a bulky new redesign. I also appreciate them bringing back the Gizoids from Sonic Battle and Advance 3, even giving us some new forms for them like Sharib and Skelia, and even a Gizoid Guardian. The handheld Sonic games always had a strong sense of continuity, so I liked that even when doing an entirely different thing such as Chronicles, they still carried over some elements from the previous games to make them still feel like the same universe. Like, could you imagine Chronicles if it just had you fighting Moto Bugs and Buzz Bombers and Crab Meats? Sure, it'd be more akin to what Sonic is stereotypically seen as, but it would feel like a step back thematically. Also, I have not played Chronicles all the way through in a long time, but I'm pretty sure it plays with the idea of different dimensions or something, giving a reason as to why all these new echidnas are showing up. And I really love their designs, not just following the tribal stuff and going for something more futuristic like with Sheed. And Imperator Rix is cool too. Shoutouts to the builder echidna smoking a cigar though. He's the coolest. Interestingly, it's also the only game to feature a robot version of Dr. Eggman, there being a segment where you're in Metropolis trying to get something when the city's power grid switches off and opens a hazard vault, revealing Eggbot, who was built to be part of the Eggman Empire but abandoned after being deemed as too faulty. Runners also wanted to do a similar thing, folks finding out that inside the code for the game was unused images of the normal Eggman render, edited to look like a robot with purple eyes. The same for Espio too, although being Runners, an iPhone game, I couldn't imagine these being used in any kind of outstanding way, so not much was lost. Dude, everyone give a round of applause to Sonic Forces, though, for having some of the shittiest fucking robots out of any Sonic game. Being that Eggman has taken over the world, his badniks begin being mass-produced, which just means, oh perfect, we can just get lazy. They're all way too basic and have none of that Eggman flair. Although I'd say that goes for Forces as a whole. 6 months of a world being taken over by Eggman, and there's fucking nothing. No posters, no signs, no billboards. But whatever, no more Forces. But kids all wanted toys of the fucking ostrich-looking robot. How about the badnik who'll be remembered for years to come? Missile Pod. Come on, guys, just give him a fucking pair of googly eyes. It's not that hard. See, there's two approaches to Sonic enemies. Really fucking badass for no reason, and Fisher-Price, no in-betweens. Or you could just be Sonic Shuffle and go balls off the walls with these things. Every time you need to get the Power Star equivalent, you're sent off to battle against one of many creatures. Who could forget Fish with ice skates, Yeti with a surfboard, Palm Tree with a fishing rod, Thing. Honestly, I don't think a single one could possibly top these guys, so I think we can end this here. Last one I'd like to mention is from the newly released Sonic Frontiers, where the Ancients had quite possibly the most genius idea ever in creating a robot that literally just puts Sonic into a balloon full of water so he can slowly drown. Nice going. I'm glad that Frontiers got a little more experimental with enemy variety, compared to what we've been seeing throughout the 2010s, either just being worse models of previous robots like in 4 and Lost World, or fucking boring like in Forces. Even if I don't think their designs are all that memorable, I appreciate them doing something new. And if the cyberspaces are anything to go off, it seems that Sega has reached some sort of middle ground when it comes to nostalgia, that being something old, something new. You can have this realistic environment, but you gotta fit in Green Hill somewhere. You can have these bizarre ninja things, but you gotta find somewhere for the Motobug. And honestly, as long as they don't go overboard with the retreading, I'm pretty fine by that. Seriously though, he looks like a monkey, you have to agree.